Oh my gosh, this state is so amazing. I've been here so many times in the last couple years, and just the greatest patriots in the country are in Texas. And I think it starts because they love Texas with all their heart. And when you love your state, then you love your country. But you got to love your state first and foremost. So thank you for being just awesome Texans, and it's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, we're so glad you're here, and we're so glad for and so happy for you for what you're doing in Arizona. And I want you to maybe talk a little bit about that and your journey, because you had a very successful career as a journalist, almost 3 decades as a journalist, which means you must have started when you were like 5 years old. But what made you want to switch from the media and get into politics and run for governor of Arizona?
So the real question is, why would you leave the corrupt world of media and get into the even more corrupt world of politics? I had no intention. If you would have told me 2.5 years ago that this is where I would be, I would have thought you were on some sort of a hallucinogenic drug. But I walked away from my career, and I put out a video. I mean, I've been in the homes of Arizonans for 27 years as the most trusted person in the state. And I realized during COVID that it was becoming pure propaganda, and I was having a hard time even being able to get the truth out. So I decided that I could no longer do this work, and I walked away from my paycheck, the security, and all of that. And when I resigned, I put out a video because I wanted the good people of Arizona, who'd always been so kind to me, to know why I was leaving. And little did I know that that video would go viral within hours of putting it online. And the people were so moved by that. Apparently that was a courageous act, to walk away from your job. So the people started reaching out to me by the thousands with wonderful messages thanking me and for having the courage to walk away and for being a fair journalist. And they said, would you please run for office? That became kind of a common thread. And at first I laughed at it, thinking they must really hate me if they want me to go into politics. And then I realized there is a common thread here, and maybe this is God's way of tapping me on the shoulder and saying, this is what I freed you up for. So I gave it a lot of thought. I looked at who was running, and I realized that the Democrat running was, in my opinion, a real danger to Arizona. I know I'm not supposed to get into too much politics here, but
oh, it's fine.
I can?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I looked at the Republicans running, and I didn't see anybody who could get us past the finish line. I had 85% name ID. I had the skills that God had given me through 30 years of being a journalist, and I thought, maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what our founding fathers envisioned, real people stepping forward and running for office, not the career politicians. So I threw my hat in the ring, and we had a movement from day one. It only took us 3 weeks to get the signatures to be on the ballot, to which me, being a hard worker, said, why did it take us so long? And we had a couple people with a little bit of political experience in our ragtag team of just Arizonans who love the state. And they said, Kari, it usually takes 9 months. You have to pay people to get signatures. You have to pay for the signatures. It's never been done in 3 weeks. We started having rallies, and there would be 1,000, 2,000 people there. And we realized, wow, there's something going on here. And I'm not going to take credit for it. I'm going to give credit to God, and I'm going to give credit to the people of America for waking up and realizing that, Benjamin Franklin, you've got a republic if you can keep it. We haven't been keeping it very well, and they realize we have to step in and take back our country. And so the people of Arizona are activated. We're doing great. We beat an establishment behemoth with a ton of money in the primary, and it was brutal. $30 million, much of it in attack ads aimed at me. And here we are. We are the nominee, and we are kicking butt and taking names.
Amen. Amen. So Arizona obviously has some things in common with Texas. You guys are a large border state, just like we are. And we see every day here some of the issues that we face because of the total abdication of responsibility from the federal government. So, it is really up to the states to step in and protect its communities and its citizens from what the cartels and the all the issues coming across from Mexico. So if you become governor of Arizona, what would you like to see Arizona do to ultimately protect its southern border?
Well, it's not just the cartels, it's the federal government itself. They're working hand in hand, in my opinion. By allowing this to go on, the federal government is siding with the cartels over the people. Mm-hmm. That's what I believe is happening. I've been down to the border so many times, and you're watching the Border Patrol hauling more people in. We are trafficking people into our country. And Joe Biden is a big part of that. I blame him for this. And so we can't allow him to solve the problem. He is the problem. And the solution, obviously, you all know about Guarantee Clause, Article 4, Section 4, which is the government's to protect us from invasion. We have an invasion. They're not doing it. It's a dereliction of duty, and the remedy is right there in that great document, Article 1, Section 10. And we meet all three criteria. We're being invaded. Our citizens are in danger, imminent danger, and there's no time for delay. And so we are going to, on day one, issue a declaration of invasion and get the ball rolling and take back our border and secure our state. And we hope that other like-minded states will help us out. We've got big plans. Our border policy is called Defend Arizona, and we believe other states will chip in and help, and hopefully it'll spread over to Texas. We might just take Don Huffines over to Arizona if you guys don't mind and have him help us. So that's part of the plan. I mean, I can go on. We're going to finish President Trump's wall project. We have 27 miles left. The federal government has abandoned the materials that we already paid for right there on the desert floor in Arizona. So we're going to work with the legislature to redefine abandoned federal property, take that back, finish constructing President Trump's wall, get our Arizona National Guard on the border. Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis has agreed to send his National Guard on the condition that we use them to stop people from coming over. It's really hard to go down to that border and watch as people just walk in. We need to start putting our hand out and saying, stop, turn it around. And I'm not a fan of bussing people around, by the way. I like the message we're sending when Martha's Vineyard loses their mind over 50 people. I think the message has been received. We want to eventually start sending people back across the border. But the hardest thing on the campaign trail for me as a mother of two, and coming from a big family myself, has been the parents that come up to me and say, my 22-year-old daughter took a half a Xanax pill and died, or so she thought. It wasn't really, it was laced with fentanyl. Had a father come up to me a few weeks ago, his 17-year-old son. We had two 19-year-olds with their whole life ahead of them. They died after taking a pill. We are losing a generation of our young people. Number one cause of death right now in this country, 18 to 45. If we can't get motivated to save our young people, then I don't know what's wrong with our country. I'm motivated. And right now, Arizona, which should be known as the Grand Canyon State, is unfortunately becoming the fentanyl pipeline state. And we have to stop it. We've got to take on these cartels, take back control of our border. And we intend to do that. And I don't care what kind of pushback we get. We are ready to take on this battle.
Good. Well, someone needs to fight for these people in these communities, so appreciate you doing that. Speaking of looking out for a whole generation of children, you know, Arizona's got a lot of props, right, for passing universal school choice and largest ESA bill recently. You know, I know not all the hurdles are done in Arizona. So, you know, obviously if you win, you take over as governor. Can you talk a little bit about how you would fight to implement that program and how you would fight to ensure that parents continue to be the number one driver in their kids' education?
It's so critical. I actually think, you know, when we put out our education policy, the first line was, let's fund, obviously, the student, not the system. So that our legislature was able to get this passed and Governor Ducey signed it. I've got to give him credit where credit is due. He's worked hard to give us education freedom. I hope it sticks. We know the left is working hard. The teachers' unions are working hard to try to bring this down. They're diabolical with their use of language. They call it SOS, Save Our Schools. That's what they call their effort to try to drag us back into the old way of doing things where we are tied to a public school, whether it's doing well or whether it's not doing well. I am dedicated to take up that battle and make sure that ESA for all stands, and I even want to get more money going to each student. This money, this tax money we put in to our education is not earmarked for a school. We put tax money in to educate a student. And it's about time we do that. So in Arizona, we have a huge step forward in that. We're looking forward to seeing it go forth, and it is. It's been record. I mean, I think the website crashed. There was so much desire to get these students, the money for the students to go to whatever school they want to go to. I believe this is the best way to improve all schools. I'm a product of public schools. My father was a public school teacher way back in the day. He would be mortified at what's happening right now. But the best way to improve curriculum, the fastest way, is competition. If a school is a public school, government-run school, is watching their enrollment go down. And it's going over to the charter and the private school. They're going to have to reassess what they're doing, or they're going to lose all of the students pretty soon. So I think it's the greatest way to improve all schools, and we're going to push really hard. I'm really excited about my plan for education in that we want to do a dual track education after sophomore year. After 10th grade, we want kids to have a choice to go the college track and then, keep taking the college prep classes, or introduce and expand trade skill training, vocational training, and career certification in our high schools so our kids are ready for the real jobs that are out there. I think that's just as important as ESA for all. I really do, because what's the purpose of educating our kids? Is the purpose of educating our kids to bide time and just to, have them out of the house for 7 hours a day? Maybe on some days you appreciate that as a mom. But the purpose is to have them be citizens who can support themselves, who can get a job, who can be self-sufficient, self-reliable. And we're not producing that right now. Our kids get out, they don't know what to do. How do you get from point A to point B if you don't know what point B is? We have to start introducing our kids to what jobs are out there, how much money they make. I went to a school district called Vale School District near Tucson. They've expanded vocational training in their schools. I was in one of the classes, a welding class. Kids were having they loved it. They absolutely loved it. The instructor said, Kari, every single one of these students will walk out of high school with a diploma and a full-time job offer making $70,000 to $100,000 full benefits as welders. These are the jobs. These are the high-paying jobs. They're not going to end up floundering for 5 to 10 years trying to figure out which way to go at the mountain of college debt, college loan debt. They are going to have a career, and we need to get our kids ready for that at a young age. We shouldn't have to wait a whole decade after high school to figure out where our kids are going. So I'm really excited about that. We're pushing that hard, and I believe we're going to fight to keep the ESA for all. I hope we can beat back this really sinister push by the left to stop it. It's quite evil if you think about it. They want our kids trapped in failing schools. It's quite evil, really.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you say that, because what you're doing in Arizona is making a difference here in Texas. So we were watching, and we are hoping to not only copy it, but then take it to the next step. So we'll get some of that competition going.
Yes, we need, and we can. I believe Texas, Florida, and Arizona can save this country. We're going to show everybody the way to do it, and then we'll see other states doing the same thing.
Awesome. So, Kari, she has a limited time, so we're going to go to questions in just a second. My last question for you before we turn it over to our audience is, you were in the media for such a long time, and earlier today, our very own Sherry Sylvester, who also was a longtime media member, was up here talking about how corrupt and awful the media is. So do you think that it can be changed, and how do you, as conservatives, how do you propose that we get our message across when it feels like the media is not a fair arbitrator?
Well, we have to push back. I'm going to tell you that one of my favorite things about running is when I have an encounter with the fake news, because I love to just throw it right back at them. I don't know that it can be saved. I'm interested in seeing, like, CNN recently just got purchased, or they have a new head of CNN, and it sounds like they're trying to at least bring it somewhere more away from the far left. I don't know, that the brand might be so permanently damaged that even if they start covering news fairly, it's such a damaged brand. It's like, I don't know if they can pull it out. But we are starting to see new media companies form. And I think that's a really great thing. You're seeing, just think of Steve Bannon. Think of all the eyeballs he has. And we're watching the ratings falter. I just had an encounter with the fake news last week when we were getting an endorsement from police, and they were trying to badmouth the police. And I said to one of the guys, I said, you're missing the boat here. I know that nobody's watching you anymore. And it's true. For example, the market that I worked in, Phoenix, the reach of the Phoenix television market is 6.5 to 7 million people. Think about that. When you turn the TV on, or when you put your newscast out, you have the ability to reach 6.5 to 7 million people. And their 10 o'clock newscast reaches 2,000. That's how many people are tuning in. That is abject failure. Mm-hmm. And so eventually it's going to get down to zero. They just won't even be able to pay to keep the lights on. And I think that's when they're going to finally wake up, and either they go under, somebody buys them. I don't know what the answer is. but you just have to stop watching them. I'm finding alternative news sources, and that's where I get my information, independent journalists, and thank God that we have access to some really brave people who are doing their own journalism.
Yeah, amen, amen. All right, so questions for Kari. Who is first? Oh, I gave you a heads up, Clint. I said we're going to questions right after this. All right, so where's Clint going to first? Right over here, Bernie.
This crowd is so quiet. Is everybody okay?
Get some more
We're
coffee
fine.
or something, right?
And we're delighted you're here to join us. Okay, good. Kari, first, thanks for running, and thanks for stepping away from the corrupt world of media and into the corrupt world of politics. You put Arizona on a level with Texas and Florida, and we hope you're successful in that endeavor. But one big difference between Arizona and Texas and Florida is that you have a pretty high state income tax, and you have a state income tax.
Yeah.
We don't have that, and the Floridians don't have that. What are you going to do about that?
Well, I've said it. I'd love to bring it as close to zero as possible, but I've watched, I've been covering politics for almost 30 years in Arizona, and I've watched one politician after the next come out and say, we're going to get rid of the income tax, and they don't do it. So I'd rather under-promise and over-deliver. I don't want to see us eliminate that tax and then have to watch the other taxes go up. And so what I believe is we will have such a healthy state, a safe state, and a great state to start a business that will continue to grow. Our revenues will go up, and then we can get rid of that income tax. I know we have a lot of senior citizens in Arizona. They come there to retire. And I hate to see their property taxes go up or other taxes where it makes it life really impossible for them. They're on fixed incomes, many of them, and if we start raising a bunch of taxes and make it untenable for them, that would not be good. But I want to get Arizona to a place where Texas is in Florida, where everybody wants to go there, and we grow, our tax base goes up, our revenue goes up, and then we can get rid of our income tax. That's my goal, but I don't want to make promises I can't keep. My promise right now is to secure that border, and secure that border, and secure that border, and also bring honest elections back. So, but we're going to work toward that. We might just surprise people early with that one.
Amen. Next question, right up here. Terry.
I know you just mentioned it, but could you elaborate a little bit on what you intend to do to assure election integrity once you become governor?
It's so funny, when I started this run, like right away I was asked about one of the reasons I could no longer do the news, to be honest, is the lying about the election. How can I, with a straight face, go on TV and lie about the election? I can't do that. And so we had a forensic audit. We have a lot of brave patriots in Arizona who pushed and pushed to get that. And then we had some lawmakers who listened to their constituents, and we got a forensic audit, and it revealed a lot of problems. So we're going to basically take that forensic audit and everything we've learned about the election, and we're going to look for all the loopholes they used to cheat, and we're going to close those loopholes with the legislature. The Constitution says state legislature makes election law. In 2020, everybody and their brother was making election laws. Mm-hmm. And that's wrong. That's unconstitutional. Personally, I'm involved in a lawsuit in federal court to try to ban the use of electronic vote counting, vote tabulating machines. And we're working hard on that. We had it denied because of a standing. They said I didn't have standing. I mean, I'm a voter. I'm a candidate. I mean, I think I've got pretty big standing on that, but we're appealing it, and so we're continuing to fight that battle. We can do everything right, and I know we're going to have a red wave. I believe that, and our legislature will be conservative, and we're going to be able to make big moves to shore up our elections. Paper ballots. I'd love to see day of voting. We have election month right now. I want to get back to election day, but even if we do everything right, if we keep those electronic voting machines, we'll never have fair elections. They won't tell us how they tabulate. We know that the components are made by our adversaries in China. We know that there have been problems before. We can't even really find transparency in it because the companies won't tell us about how they're using these machines. And just in this last election in Georgia, they did a hand count in 2 counties. And the person who came in first place on the electronic voting machine in the hand count was 3rd place. The person who came in 3rd place in the electronic voting machine was actually the 1st place winner in the hand count. We can't have this or we'll never have fair elections. So this is a top priority, and the voters of Arizona know it. The voters of Arizona know that we are, and it's not just Republicans who care about this, by the way. I'm telling you, independents are asking me about it. We can't have elections where every time we have an election, we've got one segment of the population or the other who doesn't have faith in the election. We want a level playing field. Nobody needs to have an advantage, but we can't keep having 5 and 6 ballots show up at a home where one person lives, and that's how it is right now in Arizona. So we got to clean up the election rolls, but I will work with the legislature, and we will make sure we get some laws on our books that will make sure we have honest elections.
Amen. Next question for Kari. Maybe while we're waiting on that, Kari, I actually have a question for you. You know, there's a lot being said about, you know, big tech and its control over data privacy, censorship, things like that. You've seen issues, obviously, with that. What do you think, as governor and in the state, that you can do to maybe push back and hold some of these tech companies accountable?
You mean when it comes to First Amendment, I'm assuming you're talking about. I like what Governor DeSantis did. You don't always have to reinvent the wheel. If there's another governor doing something great, and Governor DeSantis is doing a lot right, you know, you're starting to they're starting to charge these tech companies who are censoring people who are running for office. That's the biggest shocker, that a President Trump could be taken off of Twitter. Somebody running for office could be censored or shadow banned, and we have to push back on that. And so I'll look at what he did. I think the way to do it is to, and then there was just recently a ruling. You know, this is the public square now.
Yep.
And that happened in Texas, correct?
Yeah, HB 20. Yeah.
And so we could just take that law and rework it in Arizona, and we've got precedent now that has been set, and we've got to have our First Amendment rights back. It's only, how many people in here actually feel like they have freedom of speech right now in this country? No one. I didn't think so. If you go to the DNC, everyone raises their hand. They've got plenty of freedom of speech. And so we'll work with the legislature. I know that they all, many of the people in our own state legislature, the Republicans, have been banned or their accounts have been shadow banned. And so they're all about getting our freedoms back. Once you give up a freedom, you got to fight to get it back. And this is why the Second Amendment is so critical, so critical. Everyone is trying to push back on that, and gun control. My opponent is all about gun control, expanding gun-free zones. I call them sitting duck zones. We're never going to budge an inch on the Second Amendment in Arizona. It's the only thing keeping us a free country right now, or semi-free country. If we let them take away our gun rights, we will lose this country. And so Arizona is going to hold the line on that one.
Amen. Thank you, Kari.
I think we were ahead of you guys when it comes to constitutional carry by about a decade, right?
We don't always lead on everything here, you know. So we got we
It's
need
like,
to be
wow,
pushed, just
we
like
beat
anyone else.
Texas on that? What's going on?
That's right. That's right. All right, we have time for one last question for Kari. Right here up front. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Okay, back to this election integrity thing. What are you going to do about mail-in ballots?
I'm glad you asked. I am absolutely for day of voting, election day voting. Absentee ballots should be for people who are severely disabled, obviously in the military as well. And we need to bring back small precincts, because one of the concerns we get in Arizona is people who are elderly or do have some health problems, and they say, look, I can't wait in line for 2 hours. Well, first of all, you should never have to wait in line 2 hours to vote. But what they did in Arizona, and I don't know if they did the same thing in Texas, is they got rid of the small precincts where you used to go to the little corner school or the church. How interesting that during COVID they shut down our churches and schools, right? So we had to go to big voting centers because we couldn't go and safely vote, right? So we need to bring back the small precincts. If you do have some minor health problems and you can't stand, the line shouldn't be more than 5 minutes. And there's probably somebody who would let you cut in line, because that's how kind-hearted we are, right? The problem with these voting centers is you will find yourself waiting for 2 hours sometimes, or they run out of ballots like they did in Arizona during my primary. They ran out of ballots 1 hour into election. So we have to, I would like to get rid of mail-in ballots, but there are concerns with even Republican lawmakers that their constituents don't want that. So we have to tell the story of why it's important. Do we want secure elections or just convenient elections? Do we want honest elections that we have faith in, or just convenient elections? And we have to be better at telling that story, and I think we're gonna really work hard to do that. And make it so that our elderly citizens don't have to stand in line for a long time. Go back to small precincts. That's the way you can count. You can hand count in small precincts the night of the election. There's a lot of ways to fix this. It is not rocket science. We did it this way not that many years ago. And we need to go back to the way we were doing it when our elections were fair. So I'm not a fan of mail-in ballots, I'm going to be honest. And I'm going to work with it's going to take Republicans to wake up to the fact that that's where all the cheating is happening, or a big part of it. But we're going to push for that.
Fantastic.
Do you have mail-in ballots here?
We do. We just we added some security to it where you have to put in some ID so that we know it's you.
In Florida, they have to, I think, apply every year for it. It's, it is not uncommon in Arizona to get 5 ballots at a home where there's 1 or 2 people living. This kind of stuff has to stop.
Yeah, we don't have universal mail-in balloting like that.
I'm not even on the mail-in ballot list, and I got a mail-in ballot in my own election. So, and I'm running against, by the way, Katie Hobbs, who is our Secretary of State who oversees the elections. She's not recused herself. And so people who say, Kari, don't talk about 2020, it makes people uncomfortable. I go, okay, let's talk about 2022, August 2nd. And Katie Hobbs is the one who gives guidance on how many ballots you're going to need, each county. So she gives the guidance on that, and in Pinal County, one of our largest counties, they ran out of ballots 1 hour into Election Day, and only the Republican ballots they ran out of, by the way. So this is how messed up our elections are, and I'm not okay with that, and I hope that no Arizonan is okay with that. I wouldn't want to see, if the Democrat ballots would have been, they would have run out of Democrat ballots 1 hour into the election, I would find a problem with that. I want fair elections for all. And I believe that Democrats and independents and Republicans want that. They want to vote. They want to know their legal vote counts. They want to go to bed on election night. They want to know who the winner is and not be counting for 10 days. And they can live with that, even if their guy didn't win. But we can't live with what's going on right now, where we're running out of ballots, where we're counting for 10 days, and we're finding more ballots here, and they're finding more ballots there. We won't have a country if we don't get our arms wrapped around this and take care of it. So that's where I stand. It might not be popular for everybody, but I'm not in this to be popular. I'm in it to do the right thing.
Amen. Thank you, Kari. So, Kari, thank you so much
Thank you.
For being here. Thank you for being in the arena and showing true courage. You know, I think a lot of times people think courage is about fearlessness. You clearly have that. You don't seem afraid of anything. But it is actually about sacrificing self for just goals, and you do that every day, so appreciate it so
I
much.
do have a fear, actually.
What's that?
My fear isn't the fake news, Joe Biden, none of that. We have to tread straight forward into that. My fear is what happens if we're not victorious in this. My fear is what happens if we don't all step in, what this country looks like. That's my fear. And to think that I'm doing this well in politics with no experience, but you know what it is? I'm speaking simple truths. Who would have thought by saying we have 2 genders, something so basic as that, would be it's like I'm actually winning politically by just speaking the truth, talking about the Constitution. Our forefathers knew exactly what they were doing. The solutions are all right there. We just have to go back to that document. And I frankly think we've got to bring God back. This is where our country went wrong, when we started pushing God out. So we're just going to do the right thing. If I do well and have a great political career, if I'm doing the right thing, that's great. If not, I'm still going to get in there, clean things up, and then I'll just move on with my life. So thank you all for having me today. I appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kari Lake. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you came down.